Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, folks, the case that we're looking at that we've covered since it occurred back in March it was known as the Kansas Moms case. And of course, you see on the screen Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly, and to the left is the grandma, Tiffany Adams, the sort of diabolical planner and the rage behind this horrific double murder that just doesn't make any sense to any of us, to any of us that have followed this case. One of the big things is that, okay, we understand how Tiffany Adams was involved in a custody battle with her daughter-in-law. But how did these other individuals, how were they so enraged that they also got involved in this horrific murder? And that's Tad Burt Cullum, all the way to the left, and of course, Tiffany Adams, Cole Earl Twombly, and Cora Twombly. And of course, there's another individual who early on in this investigation, you see on your screen now, Paul Grice. And he turned out to be one of the most violent of all of them. And they initially released him from custody. It was very difficult to believe that they released him from custody because they didn't think they did the right thing. They didn't think they had probable cause against him. But as the investigation started to develop, and Tiffany Adams basically confessed to what she did, her part in this, it was clear that there were 5 of them, and you see them up on the screen there. And they were known as God's misfits. All 5 of them. So was this some kind of cult? Was this a cult, God's misfits, that all answered to this woman here, Tiffany Adams? And that they followed her directions? Did she have some type of power over them? Power that enabled her to kill these 2 young women, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. Jillian Kelly, who really had nothing to do with this other than to be the escort of Veronica Butler, escorting her to a custody exchange. And just everything about this. Now, of course, the autopsy reports are back, which really show you the rage of these people and the absolute horror that was inflicted upon these victims. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your drink, hold on to your cup of coffee, hold on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. You're about to enter the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Before we start the show, first, a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. You know, folks, back in April, as this case was unfolding, we know it occurred in March. This is how the New York Times described it. 4 people involved in an anti-government group they called God's Misfits have been arrested on murder and kidnapping charges in the disappearance of 2 Kansas women who last month were likely targeted over a custody dispute. 2 bodies were recovered as part of the investigation, and on Tuesday evening, they were identified as the missing women, Veronica Butler, who was 27, and Jillian Kelly, 39. And the arrestees were Tiffany Adams, 54 years old, her boyfriend, Tad Cullum, Cora Twombly, and her husband, Cole Twombly. And they were arrested early on in the investigation, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. Court documents did not include contact information for lawyers of any of the 4 people. They were held without bail at Texas County Jail in Guymon, Oklahoma. So that is a little bit of the background here. And that's the how, but not the why. I mean, why did this happen? And it was over a custody dispute. And apparently Tiffany Adams, who you see on this screen here, deeply, deeply hated her daughter-in-law, Veronica Butler, to the degree that she had these other individuals join her in this little kidnapping and murder plot. And a horrific murder it was. It was absolutely outrageous. This is the new from News Nation, the new report on the autopsy of Veronica Butler. And one of the things that we notice in hearing or having this information delivered to us about the autopsy is the rage involved in this horrific death. Anytime you kill someone or anyone kills someone, I'm not going to say you kill someone, anytime someone kills someone with a knife, it's very up close and personal. And it usually indicates a great deal of rage on behalf of the murderer. So I'm going to put on the screen a News Nation report on the autopsy of Veronica Butler.
Dupree, she is a former police detective, medical doctor, former medical examiner, and retired forensic pathologist. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Dupree. The 30 sharp wounds here, stabs and incisions. It's an awful report to read. What stood out specifically to you, Dr. Dupree?
Well, certainly the number of wounds was one thing, but she did have at least 4 wounds that would have been fatal, likely, and those were up around her neck. Also, the amount of defensive wounds that she had. She was fighting for her life. I mean, she put up a good fight. She just had such extensive damage and such severe wounds.
Yeah, it said 10 of the wounds on Veronica, and they called them, quote, defensive style. What does that mean, and how are they able to figure out if it's a defense a defense wound?
Well, we call it defensive wounds if it's on the extremities of the body, usually the hands or feet, because if someone is attacking you, you're going to fight back with your hands and even your feet. And so if there are wounds in those areas, typically they are considered then defensive wounds.
Okay, so that's how they know it's from essentially like fighting back?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's not just fighting back, it's fending off an attack. And that's how, I mean, normally, unless you're fighting for your life, you're not going to grab the blade of a knife because you know it's going to rip your hand, it's going to cut your hand wide open. But if you're being attacked and you're fighting for your life, you're going to try to ward off the instrument that can cause your death. The same is true with a firearm. If someone's going to shoot you, you're going to put your hands up in front of you. That may not stop the bullet, but that's an instinct we all have to defend ourselves, self-preservation, and thus defense wounds showing that you're trying to save your own life and ward off this attack. And it's very natural for a human being to do that.
Okay. The report mentions that both of Veronica's jugular veins were defected. Do you think that's, first of all, what does that mean? And do you think that's ultimately what caused her to die?
It is. That's why the medical examiner that did the autopsy actually stated that she died very quickly. The jugular veins in your neck are going to be carrying a large amount of blood to your brain and to your body. And so when those are injured or incised or cut in some way, you're going to bleed out relatively quickly.
How quickly? Because I'm just thinking with all the defensive wounds, could she have been stabbed in the jugular and then been fighting back, or would have been the fighting back would that happen first and then she would have been stabbed in the neck area? I mean, how do you think the timeline would look?
Well, I think given the amount of wounds and what I interpret as a lot of rage in this assault, I think that it probably all happened very quickly. She probably suffered some of the defensive wounds early on, but also even after her jugular veins were injured, she probably still fought back for a short time. But once those jugular veins were actually injured, her death was fairly quick after that.
It's just terrible to think about. How do you think all of this will be used with the prosecution? And are there any holes that I mean, is there anything that the defense could pick up on in the autopsy report that you've seen, or do you think this will just help tell the story in terms of how awful it was from the prosecution side?
I really think this is going to help the prosecution a lot. There's so many wounds. This was an act of rage. This was somebody who was in a frenzied attack on this young woman. And I think that is going to help the prosecution immensely.
Yeah, and we're just looking again, I mean, the 9 stab wounds, 21 incised wounds. I mean, you've seen a lot of cases. This seems extreme in terms of how badly hurt she was, right?
Absolutely. And again, this is an indication of a lot of rage in this. And so it's not surprising that she would fight back, significantly. But the injuries were just too significant, especially those to her neck.
Yeah, and just the way they were found in the freezer and it was buried, and it was an awful report to read. We'll obviously be there for the court hearing.
Thanks for.
So just again, outrageous. This whole case. When we first started covering this case, I believe it was in March. For days and weeks, no one was reporting on how they died. Initially, it was thought that they died of a gunshot wound. Remember, relatives found their vehicle, and there were signs of a horrific struggle, a horrific violent act, but there was obviously no bodies there. And when you look at these pictures of these people, right? And when you think this stemmed from a custody battle between Tiffany Adams, who you see on the bottom next to Veronica Butler, and Tiffany's son, Wrangler Rickman, who had nothing to do with this apparently because he was in drug rehab when this occurred. Veronica Butler had visitation with the children every Saturday, but there were signs that they had actually attempted to kill Veronica one other time, or they had planned to kill her. So this had been set in motion. And just think of this rogues gallery. There's all 5 of them there. You see, for those that are listening, Tiffany Adams, Tad Cullum, Earl Twombly, Cora Twombly, and Paul Grice. And collectively, they were known as God's Misfits. But in my opinion, what they will find out as this case goes forward in the court system is that Tiffany Adams had some type of control over the other 4 here. How did she get them to do her bidding, to kill her daughter-in-law and an innocent woman by the name of Jillian Kelly? Just absolutely outrageous. But again, I believe that we're going to find out that she had some kind of control over them. You know, the autopsy report on Gillian Kelly had come out earlier, and there was just the same type of violence, the same type of overkill, just absolutely outrageous in what occurred. And it was so similar to the autopsy report we just went over with Veronica Butler. It seemed like they were both killed in just about the same way. Here's from a local TV station. I'm going to play this little clip here. KSAN.
We now know how 2 Southwest Kansas mothers were murdered.
Their causes of death were released in a motion to consolidate the 5 suspects' preliminary hearings. Prosecutors say Paul Grice stabbed and killed Veronica Butler, and while doing so, he cut his hand badly. They say Grice threw the knife, his clothes, and stun gun in the burial site. Prosecutors allege his clothes have Butler's DNA on them.
Prosecutors also say Gillian Kelly was also stabbed, but by Tad Colum. They allege Colum drove Gillian and Veronica's bodies to a burial site that he dug a day before. Colum is accused of burying the bodies inside of a freezer. His clothing found at the site also allegedly contained Gillian's DNA. Cora Twombly and Tiffany Adams are asking a judge to separate their preliminary hearings from the other suspects. Attorneys for Cora filed a motion that says having the 5 prelims at the same time could lead to prejudice, and says there will be a lot of evidence presented and it will be hard for a judge to separate which evidence is admissible against which defendant. The reasoning in Tiffany Adams' motion is similar. Her attorneys say, quote, for any judge, no matter how mentally acute or diligent, the task of keeping the evidence in these 5 cases sorted out through a joint preliminary hearing is daunting, to say the least, end quote. And they also argue that since this is a potential capital case, it requires a heightened degree of reliability. The state wants to keep the prelims for Tiffany, Tad, Paul, Cole, and Cora together. Prosecutors say the judge has the ability to determine which evidence is admissible to which defendant. They also say there will be no evidence favorable toward anyone, and say, quote, they are all in it together, unable to implicate another without implicating oneself. A judge will decide whether to separate the preliminary hearings on Wednesday.
So, you know something, one of the things that screams out about this case is, of course, the conspiracy of it. They all had to be in on the planning, the organizing, and ultimately carrying this horrific crime out, carrying it out. Stun guns, cell phones, knives brought to the scene, the kidnapping of these people. This was, I don't want to call them these people, Veronica Butler and Gillian Kelly. Kidnapping and the planning and the talking about this all had to be prearranged. And these are the things that really are disturbing when you watch this case. And I cannot, as I cover this case, I cannot help but really, and look, both women I feel horrific for, just absolute horrible death. But Gillian Kelly really wasn't involved in this. She was someone that went to the scene to accompany Veronica Butler as somewhat as a chaperone. She worked for social services. And because of that, it's the old adage, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And no doubt she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm going to play, this was the autopsy report on Gillian Kelly. Just came out maybe a few days before Veronica Butler's.
And graphic. The Oklahoma medical examiner reports that Kelly was stabbed or cut at least 16 times. A majority of those injuries were were on the back of her head and neck. They fractured her vertebrae and damaged her spinal cord. The medical examiner says that her death was, quote, very rapid. The report also says that Kelly had defensive wounds on her hands and possible stun gun marks on the back of her neck and shoulder. The autopsy report for Veronica Butler has not yet been released, and we are told that should be out on November 15th. 5 people are charged with Butler and Kelly's deaths. Tiffany Adams, Tad Cullum, Cole Twombly will have their preliminary hearings on December 17th. Cora Twombly and Paul Grice waived their prelims, and they won't be into court until early February.
So again, that was an old report, but it gives us the more or less the background of this. Like, what the horrific nature of this. Was this all about a custody dispute? And allegedly, there was some SA going on in the home of Veronica Butler, and we know what that is. I can't say those words on YouTube. And that could have been where the rage came from. The rage in regards to the nature of this murder, or murders, the nature of these murders, and how, when they talk about the personal nature of using a knife, the personal nature of stabbing, the personal nature of overkill. We just heard that Jillian Kelly died quickly because they severed her spinal cord. I think that's someone that knows how to kill also. Killed her very quickly. And we heard with Veronica Butler, they cut her jugular. Her body was empty of blood when they recovered. They used the term exsanguination. That means all the blood in your body has basically emptied out. And then just think of the planning. They had already had a pre-dug hole that they dug with a backhoe, right? And just their stupidity, certain things they didn't realize. Paul Grice was asked the question, how long does DNA last underground? You moron. Basically forever, If we learned anything from the Long Island serial killer Rex Uterman, they recovered his DNA on a body from 1993. Does that answer your question, Paul Grice? I think not. You probably don't read or watch anything else. But so that it was well planned out. But the question also is, how did Tiffany Adams get these other people to do her bidding? And that's a question that we'll keep asking until we find out as the trial moves forward.
I recovered 2 bodies and arrested 4 people facing kidnapping and other murder charges over the weekend.
This comes 2 weeks after Veronica Butler and
again, this is back a few months ago, but I'm giving you the background to this case so we understand where it has gone to right now.
Jillian Kelly disappeared. Fox 25's David Chazanoff has been reading through the court documents. David, what have you found out?
Court documents reveal the situation between Butler and one of the suspects has actually been escalating since February. Court documents Fox 25 received Monday uncovered details about 2 missing Kansas women, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. OSBI says this all started because of a lengthy custody battle between Butler and one of the suspects, Tiffany Adams, the children's grandmother. Records show the teenage daughter of Cora Twombly, one of the women arrested in the case, spoke with OSBI agents. According to the affidavit, she told agents there had been attempts to kill Butler near Hugoton, Kansas, but Butler wouldn't leave her house. The OSBI says this story matched up with what Adams looked up on her phone beforehand. How to get someone out of a house. Cora told agents the original plan was to throw an anvil through Butler's windshield while driving to make it look like an accident, quote, because anvils regularly fall off of work vehicles. That attempt takes us to March 29th, which is when the teen says the Twomblys told her they wouldn't be home because they were going to be on a mission. Court documents say the pair told the teen later that things had not gone as planned, but that they would not have to worry about Butler again. Because on March 30th, Butler and Kelly traveled from Kansas to the Oklahoma Panhandle to pick up the kids. Kelly was supervising. The teen told agents that Cora and Cole admitted to blocking the road to stop Butler and Kelly and divert them to where Adams, Tad Colum, and another person were. Law enforcement found Butler and Kelly's car near the Four Corners region. They described seeing evidence of severe injury, which included blood on the road, Butler's glasses near a broken hammer, and a pistol magazine. According to the affidavit, agents found 2 of 3 prepaid burner phones Adams bought at a property below a dam near a pasture about 8.5 miles away from where Butler's car was found. Agents said they found a hole had been dug and filled back in and then covered with hay at that location. According to court documents, the teen told agents that the suspects, Cora, her husband Cole Twombly, Adams, and Colum, were all part of an anti-government religious group called God's Misfits. Ringler Rickman, the father of the children, was in a rehab facility when Butler and Kelly disappeared. A custody hearing was originally scheduled for Wednesday of this week, and Butler's attorney tells OSBI that Butler was likely to receive unsupervised visitation. Authorities say Butler's children are safe, and the suspects are facing murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy charges.
Just a crazy report there. I don't know, the reason for this was a custody battle. A custody battle that between mostly Tiffany Adams and Veronica Butler. That's who the custody battle was for. And apparently there had been plans on other occasions to kill Veronica Butler. And those plans were thwarted and those plans didn't go on. But obviously, in this case, they were going to try until they succeeded, and they actually did succeed, of course, this time. But in killing 2 people in an absolutely horrific case. We also have to ask about when we covered this case, and there's the thumbnail on the screen, the Kansas Moms case. And again, we know these people to be part of a anti-government group called God's Misfits. And does that or did that have anything to do with their planning with Tiffany Adams, who's undoubtedly the kingpin behind this, if you can call her that, the queen pin, maybe you should say, that she planned all this and got all these people together for the purpose of killing Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. And look, and then this guy who initially, that's Paul Grice you see on the screen. Initially, he was let go. He was released from custody. And prosecutors believe that Grice stabbed Butler to death, cutting his hand badly in the process. While Tad Colum, who we have in this picture, the first one all the way on the left, Colum killed Kelly. They said Colum tossed his clothing into the freezer with the bodies, and his and Kelly's DNA was on the clothing as well. The woman's body was then allegedly placed in the freezer and driven to the burial site. Grice threw the clothing he was wearing when he killed Butler, a stun device, and the murder weapon into the grave with her, according to the court documents. DNA recovered from the clothing contained both his and Veronica Butler's DNA. The Twombleys were the lookouts on the day of the murder and confided in their daughter, hoping she would provide them with an alibi, court papers stated. Tiffany Adams, who we see in this, here's a better by herself up on the screen. She purchased the burner phones, the stun devices, the yellow straps found around the freezer, and even the pants that Colum wore and buried with the victims. Butler and Kelly vanished while en route to pick up Butler's children for a supervised visit in March. Adams is the paternal grandmother of Butler's children. Wrangler Rickman, the father of the two children, had legal custody but was in a rehabilitation facility, so the children were living with Adams at the time of the disappearance. The 5 suspects were arrested 2 weeks later and then charged with the murders. The state is seeking a joint preliminary hearing for all 5 defendants as they conspired and participated in the murders together, according to court papers. So, clearly, as much as we cover this case, and I don't know, I've never been obviously boots on the ground in this area. This area apparently has its own problems with crime, perhaps a lot of drug crime in this area. Don't know enough about God's misfits to even allege that they are involved in any kind of crimes other than this. But they will all be eligible in this case for the death penalty for the murders of Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly, who you see up on the screen. Just absolutely, absolutely outrageous. Again, we followed this case from the very beginning, and it seemed like it went away for a while, but it obviously came back into our consciousness as the autopsies were released, as more and more information was released in regards to this case. It was very much followed by everyone. Let me play a little bit of this from KSN.
Tracking breaking news at this hour. New information has been released regarding the death of Veronica Butler. And a warning to viewers, the details you're about to hear are disturbing. The Texas County Medical Examiner's Office released Butler's full autopsy report a couple of hours ago, and it comes a day after the judge denied a motion from Tiffany Adams, Tad Cullum, and Cole Twilby to keep the report sealed for another 6 months. The autopsy report shows that Butler was stabbed and cut 30 times. She hit on the back of the head, and the report also says that Butler has what appears to be stun gun marks on the back of her neck and upper back. A third of her injuries came while she was defending herself. The medical examiner says that Veronica likely grabbed the knife twice that sliced her fingers. It's also the medical examiner's opinion that Veronica's death was very quick.
So just, again, we hear all of this information coming from the autopsy, and it's not. I mean, I guess when you hear it and you don't see it, I've attended autopsies. They're very ugly, but they're necessary. And the NYPD, in every homicide case, the case detective from homicide and the case detective from the detective squad must attend the autopsy. So. What we found out, of course, the full autopsy report for the second Kansas mom, found buried in a freezer in a cow pasture after being reported missing on a road trip, has been released. The report, conducted by the Oklahoma Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, determined that Veronica Butler, who was 27 years old at the time of her death, suffered 30 sharp force injuries, including 9 stab wounds. The report obtained by KOKH said 10 of the wounds were consistent with Butler trying to defend herself, including grabbing the knife blade with her right hand. Given the extent of Miss Butler's injuries, including defects to both of her internal jugular veins, with resultant exsanguination, which is the emptying of all your blood in your body, exsanguination. It's my opinion that her death was very quick and likely occurred before she was placed inside the freezer and buried, the report said. This opinion is additionally supported by the fact that her body appeared to have remained exactly how it was placed inside the freezer. The autopsy was released over 2 weeks after the report on Jillian Kelly, who was 39. The other mom who went missing on the road trip was released, revealing more details about her death. Kelly's report listed the probable cause of death as multiple sharp force trauma injuries, including 9 stab wounds and 7 other cuts. She also died trying to defend herself, according to the report. The report said Kelly was also most likely dead before being placed in the freezer. Butler and Kelly were last seen on March 30th, heading to pick up their children before their car was found abandoned near the Oklahoma-Kansas border with foul play suspected. Both women's bodies were found in a cow pasture inside a chest freezer. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation announced on April 13th that Tad Burt Cullum, who was 43 years old, you see him on the upper in the middle on this thumbnail, Tiffany Michelle Adams, Cole Earl Twombly, and Cora Twombly were taken into custody in connection with the murders. And of course, the fifth suspect, Paul Grice, was arrested shortly after the other arrests were made. And again, there's Paul Grice. And we know that they belonged to a religiously affiliated anti-government group called God's Misfits. It was unclear if Grice was involved in the same anti-government group. I believe he was. Adams, one of the women arrested, is reportedly the grandmother of Butler's two children. Their motive, investigators say, was to get custody of the kids. Wrangler Rickman, Adams' son, had custody of the children, but was confirmed to be in an Oklahoma rehab facility when the women disappeared. Butler was allowed supervised visitation with her children every Saturday and was likely to be granted unsupervised visitation during an upcoming hearing per court documents. The state is arguing that all the defendants should face a preliminary hearing together instead of separate hearings, since they allege that all five conspired and participated in the murders of Butler and Kelly. The hearings for the Twombleys, Cullum, and Adams, they already had these hearings, but as you can understand, as defendants, they're trying to get these cases severed so they can sort of separate their cases. And one person I think that would, I believe Cora Twombly, if she was anyone, and she's the one all the way on the right here in this thumbnail, if she was ever one to cooperate with the state, it would be her perhaps that might cut a deal. But what we also realize is that the Twombly's daughter, 16-year-old daughter, has fully cooperated in this investigation. And her dad, Cole, and the mom, Cora, both made statements to the daughter about cleaning up the pickup truck and that you wouldn't have to worry about Veronica Butler anymore. All talking about Veronica Butler in the past tense. So they may use the 16-year-old daughter of the Twombleys as a witness, and they won't have to cut anyone involved in this. Any one of these four, or this five, who actually admitted to murdering Veronica Butler, you won't have to cut any of these people a deal because you have a strong enough case against them. And the grandma, Tiffany Adams, as we had reported very early on in this investigation, she made statements that she was involved in it and was involved in the murder when she was first arrested. So I think the state has a very, very strong case against these people. This was early on. Did the anti-government group God's Misfits facilitate the murders of the Kansas moms? Well, I think we pretty much know the answer to that. So this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then hit that subscribe button on the screen. Hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, and share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us in a financial way, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you can join the Police Off the Cuff family through joining either Patreon or our YouTube channel memberships. Legal-minded friends, Karen Cole, always great to see you, Karen. It always looks like you're drinking a glass of milk in that little thumbnail that you're on the screen with. Cindy Birch, hello at Police Off the Cuff and everyone in this live chat. Good to see you. Lotus in the chat. if there had already been attempts on that girl's life, she should have had a police escort when seeing her children, not a social worker type. Yeah, what they were a little bit clandestine in their ways that they in their attempt. It wasn't that out there, but they had admitted that they had tried to set her up to kill her at one other time. The love of God, Cora tried to indoctrinate her daughter into not caring about life or humans. You know, I always get some people from the area in the chat, and I really appreciate that. Hawkeyes, there's a few keeping this on the forefront. Derek, Avon Relaford, Carrie Moody, Primetime Crime, and Love Police Off the Cuff. Love this, and thank you, sir. Hawkeyes, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Lolo, how can you include the name of God in the title of your evil group? Lolo, that's so true, right? People shouldn't be using the name of the Lord in nefarious activities, right? Cindy Birch, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Absolutely. Rebecca Bulsey, good afternoon. Afternoon, Sergeant Bill. Welcome. Stephanie, blah biddy blah. Cora's daughter was very brave to speak up. 100%. She was extremely brave. Margaret the Younger from the chat. Both Paul Grice and Cora Twombly are now listed as state's witnesses as of recent court filings. Next prelim hearing is December 17th or 18th for 3 remaining defendants. You know, Margaret, I don't think they can use Paul Grice as a witness since he is one of the murderers, one that no doubt took part in killing Veronica Butler. And I don't think they can cut that guy any type of deal. Emily Flotilla, that group was following reporters all over. Brian Enten, her name escapes me, spoke on it at CrimeCon. Yes, this case is gotten a great deal of notoriety on its violent nature. Simi Sharp from the chat. I love listening to you, Sergeant Bill. Well, Simi, thank you so much. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a little bit. Aurora Knight, good morning. Greetings from Alaska. Saying hello to everyone in the chat that I'm recognizing. So this case will be moving forward. It took a while to find out the details behind it. And as we said earlier on, when we look at this picture of the 5 defendants, Tiffany Adams, Tad Cullum, Cole Twombly, Cora Twombly, and Paul Grice, this is a conspiracy to commit murder. And it's murder. And this was the kingpin of this conspiracy. Tiffany Adams. Hard to believe, I believe, in this picture. She was only like 51 years old. I mean, it seems like in this picture she had some drug problem. No one looks that bad at 51 years old, unless you have some kind of illness, but it looks more like drug abuse. And could all of these people have problems with drugs? And is this why they lost their soul and committed such a horrific, violent act upon these 2 beautiful women, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly? And, you know, the Kansas Moms case, and, you know, they're never coming back, you know. So the only thing we can hope to get is justice for the families of these people. Maui Swift, thanks. She says that Tiffany Adams, 51. Oh my God, that's a rough 51 years, Maui. Thank you. She was 4 years younger than I said. I said she was 55. 51. That's we used to say if you looked bad, we used to say, what are those, dog years? You know, because aren't dogs supposed to, their age is 7 times what a human is, right? So is Tiffany Adams 51 times 7, you know? She certainly doesn't look too good for being 51 years old. So the next hearings, the next court appearances will be in December. So this case is moving forward. I think everyone in that area wants to see justice for these two women, their families. Just, you can't even imagine this. Simi Sharp, welcome, is a new member of the Police Off the Cuff family. Welcome. Emily Foltilla, oh my God, it just came to me. Ashley Banfield was the other reporter. Yes, News Nation has done a lot of coverage on this case. And since after the arrest, this case has sort of gone away. It's not as exciting when you know who the perpetrators are. We don't hear as much. Cindy Birch, she looks 61. Yeah, Tiffany Adams certainly does. Lolo says, hate in your heart will do that too. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right that's one of the ways you age very quickly, is that you have so much hatred in your heart, in your body. Renee H., such a horrible case, those poor women. You know, most of the cases that we cover on Police Off the Cuff, they are ugly. They are pretty damn ugly. Heather, whatever, member for 22 months. Thank you, Heather. She's thanking me, but thank you for being a member. Hawkeyes, thank you for the $9.99 super sticker. Forever grateful for you, sir, and your work will go to the trial. Hawkeyes, thank you so much. And if you have any information that would be of interest to this channel, I'm going to put the email address in the chat, and you can just email me at that email address, policeoffthecuff1@gmail. And I appreciate any information, because sometimes folks with boots on the ground come up with information that even the regular news people don't get. Stephanie Bloody Blob, Sergeant Bill, every now and then I can hear you singing. It was a good day. Yeah, that was pretty funny. I used to sing that to my class when I was teaching, that little rap tune. It was a good day. I did not have to use my AK. None of my friends got killed today. It was just meant to be a joke. I used to sing that to my class when I taught college. They got a kick out of it, So, Emily Flotilla, are they going with attorneys or the sovereign citizen route? I don't think a court would allow someone to go the sovereign citizen route in a capital murder case, because if they allowed that and they got convicted, which again, I hate to use this expression, but the evidence in this case is overwhelming, because every time I say that, people say, yo, you cops think every case is overwhelming. It is in this case. The evidence is overwhelming. Think of the DNA. Think of some of the statements that have been made. And they have a witness. They have the Twombly's 16-year-old daughter. They made statements to them. Heather Mack, always great information. Thanks, from Ohio. Heather, thank you. Thank you, guys. Jacqueline, I'm 61 and not near that far gone. Yeah, it's all how you take care of yourself, And someone said before, if you have hate in your heart, you are definitely going to age much quicker than someone that has love in their heart. It's a much more difficult life. Optimistic Maya from the chat. Seems like law enforcement have done a good job in this case. Couldn't have been easy to get the locals to speak out against these misfits, as well as the cell phone tracking, etc. Optimistic Maya, you're 100% right. Bratty Little Me, I love that. I love that name. Laugh out loud. I love when Bill sings. Well, Bratty Little Me, thank you so much. I don't know why you're a brat, though. Why do you say you're a brat? X from the chat, one of the victims had nothing to do with the family. She was just a good friend for the ride to where her friend was getting her kids. I think she actually worked for social services, and she was, as part of her job, was accompanying Veronica Butler to the custody exchange of the children. So could you imagine? Could you imagine losing your life when you weren't even supposed to? You have no axe to grind in the fight. You have nothing to do with it. But these people, these evil people, take your life anyway. And Jillian Kelly was a mother, I believe, of 5 kids, you know. So there's 5 more kids without a mother, you know. Just absolutely crazy. Bill, I've always, this is Bratty Little Me, Bill, laugh out loud. I've always been known, it says Bratty, that's what my grandma used to call me, laugh out loud. P.S. sent you a message to your Facebook. Well, thank you, Bratty Little Me. Good to know the derivation of your name. Charlotte, she was a volunteer with social services, I think. Cindy Birch, yeah, there's wackos in the world. Yeah, well, they can't get much wackier than these people that took the lives of these 2 women. And we always want to remember, you know, the positive nature of things like this. And the positive part of this were these 2 women, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. And we pray for their souls. We pray for their family. They lost their lives at the hands of some very, very sick people. And for that, we pray for their families. And we pray that these people that you see in this thumbnail, God's misfits, who they became infamously known as, we hope they get convicted and they get justice, what we consider justice for these 2 women that lost their lives, that were murdered so violently on the screen, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. So we pray again for their families, their friends. I thought that I would bring you this case because the new information, the only new information we really have on this case is the autopsy information. And it really gives you a picture, a bird's eye view of what these 2 women faced. And it tells us the crime scene speaks for itself. And the crime scene in a lot of these cases is not just the location where they were murdered, but their bodies are the crime scene. And their bodies wound up buried below the ground with all the evidence inside it. So all of this evidence, we hope, will result in a quick verdict in the case against these 5. These 5 who we know now known as God's misfits. Tiffany Adams, Tad Cullum, Cole Twombly, Cora Twombly, and Paul Grice. May they have an expeditious trial to life in prison or to the death penalty, whichever the state decides to go for in this case, because I think they're deserving of the death penalty for this. Kidnapping? Yeah, kidnapping from the scene, right? That's an aggravating factor that makes this a capital murder. The conspiracy to commit murder. All of those things make this case a capital murder case. And it will wait to be seen whether or not they will in fact receive the death penalty. Paula Buck, yes, they do have the death penalty in Oklahoma, yes. So they are eligible for it. Now we will see if they do get it. Lolo, yes, you answered the question. It is a death penalty case. Again, we'll see whether or not they receive it. So, folks, I wanted to come on today and to bring you this story. We covered this in great depth when it occurred. And it's sort of gotten out of the consciousness, everyone's consciousness for a while. But it's back, and it's moving forward like all these cases do. Move forward slowly, but the wheels of justice grind very slowly, but we're hoping that the wheels of justice will come up with the right verdict in this case with all the evidence they have. From the chat, Rena H., God bless those families. Such a loss. Those kids have no mama. I'm raising my grandsons because their mama passed away August 2023. It's something that will forever haunt those kids. Rena, I'm sorry that your grandkids lost their mom. Prayers to you. Legal-minded friends, Karen Cole. I did a video on this case and the DP challenges in this state. That's great, Karen. Karen's a great, if you guys aren't subscribed to Karen's podcast, she's from across the pond in England, but she's a hell of a gal. And she has she's an up-and-coming podcaster. Just one more thing. Rule 11, yes, but who knows? So, guys, again, I want to thank everyone for coming by today. This was sort of an unplanned show that I just put together and brought to you guys. So, on behalf of Police Off the Cuff, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless everyone. I'll see you the next time.
One episode just ain't enough.